Even with this string, would you marry me?
I just don't know.
She was on her knees, makeup smudged, chest heaving, holding nothing but a baby blanket, sobbing like her entire existence was being pulled out from under her. And Matt, sitting on the couch with a voice so flat it could pass for a customer service bot, calmly announcing he was filing for full custody. He didn't yell. He didn't insult her. He just ended it. And in that moment, Jasmine didn't explode. She didn't even argue. She collapsed like every ounce of fight in her body had collapsed with her trust. Welcome to Reality Sport. I'm Olivia, and this is the breakup that's not just messy, it's emotionally unspeakable. Hit that subscribe and tell me in the comments, do you think Matt ever really wanted this relationship to work? Or was he always preparing the exit? Because what came next wasn't just a breakup, it was psychological warfare disguised as doing what's best for the child. Jasmine wasn't screaming for attention. She was begging like her soul was bleeding, holding on to Matt's jeans in the middle of a hotel room while producers tried not to intervene. And the man she crossed borders and burned bridges for stared at her and said, coldly, rationally, she deserves stability. That she? Their daughter. As if Jasmine wasn't the woman who had been wiping spit up in silence, rocking a newborn at 3 a.m., while crying alone, hoping her fiancé would look up from his phone and see her for 5 seconds. But let's not skip ahead, because behind this explosion was a slow burn heartbreak rooted in secrets, emotional disconnection, and all the wounds these two people never healed before filming. Was Matt actually scared Jasmine would unravel as a mother? Or was he under pressure from a mommy who allegedly had another woman in mind all along? And then there's the Gino twist. Did Jasmine really cut off her ex the way she promised? Because if even half the receipts Matt claimed are real, this wasn't just a relationship crumbling. It was the revenge ending of a story that shouldn't have started in the first place. And the most disturbing part? Jasmine might have seen it coming the whole time, but let her hope do the talking. Scroll back a few weeks, and the illusion was flawless. Cute family selfies, TLC teaser clips, Jasmine posting baby Matilda's first giggle like the world hadn't been seconds from chaos. It was all soft lighting, warm filters, and the kind of staged affection that tricks even the sharpest fans. From the outside, it looked like Jasmine and Matt had finally made it. New parents, new beginnings, finally stable after all the past drama. What people didn't see was that stability was a performance. Jasmine was clinging to that picture-perfect image with everything she had. Because deep down, she wasn't sure it would last. Every time the camera stopped rolling, her smile faded faster than a disappearing filter. Jasmine didn't feel seen. She didn't feel safe. And she definitely didn't feel secure. But instead of screaming, she smiled harder. Because in her head, this baby Matilda was her healing, her version of redemption. She believed, more than anything, that becoming a mom again would rewrite the story. That this was her chance to prove she was capable. Soft. Worth keeping. That she wasn't too much. And Matt? He believed they needed peace. Not emotional depth. Not vulnerability. Just peace. Quiet. Routine. The kind of emotional numbness he grew up with, where keeping the ship calm was the only priority, even if every passenger silently sank. Matt didn't understand why Jasmine needed him to say things out loud, why a simple "I'm here" could mean more to her than rent money or a planned grocery trip. Jasmine didn't understand how Matt could walk past her tears and shut down instead of showing up. Their blueprint for love wasn't just mismatched, it was weaponized by their pasts. That disconnect widened after Matilda arrived. Jasmine started spiraling from every quiet disagreement. Every unspoken mood felt like a threat. Meanwhile, Matt was emotionally shell-shocked, suffocated by responsibilities, and increasingly tuned out. He thought Jasmine overreacted. She thought he didn't care. And in between, a newborn crying without knowing why her parents couldn't look each other in the eye. Then, at a casual dinner with a friend, Matt let something slip. Something seemingly harmless that sounded like a nuclear war to someone already living on the edge. He said Jasmine felt like she had, his words, an expiration date. Like her time in his life was ticking down. Not because of something she did, but because he couldn't see her as part of a future that felt stable to him. It wasn't even said in anger. That's what made it worse. Because to Jasmine, that wasn't just betrayal. That was confirmation. That no matter how hard she loved, how hard she fought, how much she gave up, Matt still saw her as replaceable. Temporarily convenient, not permanently chosen. The worst part? She didn't find out from him. She overheard it. Through a mutual friend, days later. And the moment she heard it, she froze. The room spun. Her hands started shaking. She sat on the bed, staring at the floor, like she'd just been told she never existed at all. Not really. Not in the way that mattered. Not in the way she thought. And in that silence, her mind unraveled in directions even she wasn't ready for. She didn't yell. She didn't throw things. She didn't storm out, even though everything inside her was screaming to run. Instead, Jasmine sat frozen on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall like it had just swallowed her identity whole. The words expiration date kept ringing in her ears on loop, each time slicing deeper. Not because Matt was angry at her, not because of some big fight, but because he'd said it calmly, casually, like he was talking about tossing expired milk. That's what made it hit harder. It wasn't rage. It was indifference. Jasmine would later say she felt empty in that moment, hollowed out, like everything she fought to build was suddenly hanging by a thread Matt wasn't even holding anymore. Because for her, this wasn't just about a breakup threat. This was about worth, permanence, being wanted. She left a country, a culture, a family. She burned bridges she couldn't go back to. Jasmine came to America with one bag, one dream, and a hope in the shape of Matt's name. And now, sitting across from a man who admitted to seeing her as temporary, she felt stupid for ever believing she was safe. Love, she thought, shouldn't have a shelf life. And yet here she was, realizing that even though she built a new version of herself and gave life to a child they both begged the universe for, Matt still hadn't unlearned the idea that Jasmine was disposable, optional. She was stunned, not angry, because she honestly couldn't process the level of emotional disrespect. Her body knew before her brain caught up. Her fingers started trembling. Her eyes blurred. Her voice caught in her throat when she tried to speak, but the words just didn't come out. That's the thing about hurt like this. It doesn't rage first. It paralyzes. And when she finally did get the courage to ask Matt what he meant, he brushed it off. Played dumb. Changed the subject. Said she was being dramatic. Not even a fake apology. Not even a soft rejection. Just emotional erasure. And Jasmine, already raw from postpartum pressure and trying to hold an unstable home together, snapped inside without screaming outside. When your pain is dismissed long enough, sometimes you don't react loudly. You shut down. You stop trying to get anyone to understand. You get quiet the way a volcano does right before the biggest eruption. Because it wasn't just the expiration date. That was the headline. But it was the buildup of smaller devastations that made it lethal. Like the time Matt didn't look up when she cried while feeding Matilda. Or when she asked if they were okay and he said, "You need to stop overthinking." Or when she'd talk about being homesick and he'd change the topic to work. The small things hurt more than the big ones because they're relentless. They don't knock you down all at once. They chip away until your knees give out. Jasmine started replaying every moment she thought was real affection, second-guessing all of it. Did he ever mean it? Or had she imagined they were better than they were because she couldn't afford to see the truth? And just when the storm in her chest couldn't tighten any further, she got hit with something even uglier. She found out, through a mutual friend's hushed comment at brunch, that Matt's own mother had someone else picked out for him. Literally, a backup, a cleaner, more presentable option, a woman she allegedly said would be better suited for long-term stability. Unlike Jasmine, who had the fire but none of the function, according to that secondhand remark. It was a comment so humiliating, Jasmine didn't even finish her drink. She got up, walked out without saying a word, and sobbed in the back of an Uber while the driver tried to play it cool, acting like he didn't notice. Her gut told her it wasn't just gossip. It made too much sense. The weird little tension every time Matt's mom visited. The coded language about calm energy. The way Matt used to talk about doing everything for his family's approval, not their new one. And the worst part? Matt didn't deny it. When she confronted him, his response wasn't shock. It wasn't outrage that anyone would say such a thing about the mother of his child. It was silence. Long. Lingering. Damning. Silence is an answer. That was the night Jasmine stopped begging. Something snapped inside her. Not in rage, but in quiet, devastating clarity. She realized she could never convince a man to choose her who had already emotionally exited stage left. What she didn't realize is how much darker things were about to get. Because the bigger betrayal hadn't even surfaced yet. And the next blow wouldn't come from a stranger. It would come from the man she flew across continents for. Jasmine always thought betrayal would come with fireworks, a loud phone call, a lipstick stain, a scandal with a punchline. But the truth is, when you're living with someone who's emotionally checked out, betrayal sounds like silence. You can feel it in skipped conversations, in the way someone looks past you instead of at you, in how they sigh instead of speak. The apartment was filled with the soft sounds of baby Matilda's tiny life, bottle caps clicking, lullabies playing, laundry machines spinning. But everything else between Jasmine and Matt was dead silent. That silence wasn't peaceful. It was corrosive. Matt had started doing what corporate TikTok calls quiet quitting, but in a relationship. Still technically present. Still paying bills. Still taking out the trash. But his energy? Long gone. Jasmine could feel it in the way he slept on the couch, saying he was up early tomorrow. Or how he left for a 5-minute store run and came back 2 hours later smelling like cold fries but claiming he needed a mental break. Not once did he say, "I need space because I'm overwhelmed." He just disappeared while still being in the room. And then came the scrap paper. Jasmine wasn't snooping. She was folding laundry like she did every night, trying to convince herself they were still a team. His jeans were heavy in her hands, and when she went to shake out the pocket lint, it fell out. A tiny square. Folded twice. Simple. Casual. But inside, a woman's name with a phone number. And not one she recognized. Not a cousin, not a nurse, not a neighbor, just a name, followed by a number. That's the moment her chest turned hollow. It wasn't proof of cheating, but it was proof of secrets. And after everything, even that kind of uncertainty was enough to make her unravel. When she asked Matt, quietly, who it was, he didn't get angry. He didn't get defensive. He sighed, said it was nothing. Someone from work. That she was being too emotional. That she was overreacting. But here's the thing. When a person you love gaslights your intuition, it doesn't quiet the fear. It confirms it. Matt wasn't lying with his words. He was doing it with his distance. By refusing to clarify, refusing to connect, refusing to even say, "I get why that scared you." Because Matt doesn't do emotional confrontation. never did. According to Jasmine, even in their happy times, every difficult talk boiled down to "can we talk later?" And he never circled back. His silence used to feel like restraint. Now it felt like punishment. The emotional descent was fast after that. Their house went from tense to toxic. Every conversation was a fight, or worse, a shutdown. Jasmine would ask if they were okay. Matt would say, "I don't have the energy for this." She'd cry. He'd walk away. She'd beg. He'd scroll. It was a room full of needs being ignored on loop. To be fair, there's a counterpoint. If Matt really felt emotionally unsafe, if he truly believed her spirals threatened his mental peace, then maybe silence was the only shield he knew how to use. Not every man is trained to respond with sensitivity. And maybe, in his mind, any reaction would be the wrong one. But still, the cost of that protection was her emotional starvation. She didn't want grand gestures. She wanted to hear, "I hear you." She never did. Then came the word that flipped everything. Full custody. The second she heard it, the air left her lungs like a balloon ripped open. Full custody wasn't an argument. It wasn't a warning. It was war. And Jasmine wasn't ready for what came next. She hit the floor like it had pulled her in. Down on her knees, shoulders caved, face pressed into Matilda's baby blanket like it was her only lifeline, Jasmine didn't cry pretty. And she didn't cry for sympathy. She cried like a woman who realized she had built her entire world on a man who was never staying. The moment Matt said he was filing for full custody, her body gave out before her brain could make sense of it. And the scream that came out of her wasn't anger. It was grief stripped raw, like her soul ripped itself in half. She kept saying it again and again. "I've lost everything." Not loudly, not for drama. Quietly, like a chant. A last-ditch effort to hold on to anything that sounded like reason. But reason wasn't in that room. Just a woman broken into fragments, and a man sitting 5 feet away, looking like he'd already moved on 2 months ago. Matt didn't yell. He didn't gloat. He didn't comfort her either. His quiet, flat tone was probably the cruelest part. He said it was for Matilda's stability. He said Jasmine was too reactive, too emotional, too unpredictable, and this was the logical thing to do. Logical. That was the word. As if trying to take a baby from her mother was a math equation. As if any lawyer or custody judge wouldn't feel the blast radius from this scene. See, Jasmine wasn't just begging for custody. She was begging for dignity. "You can't take her," she said, clutching the hem of his jeans, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. "Matilda needs her mom. I'll die without her." And for once, no cameras, no fans, no filters, nothing to distract from the truth that Jasmine had nothing left to give but raw panic. The kind that doesn't fake, the kind that doesn't recover quickly. And Matt? Still calm, still cold, still refusing to budge. Was he justified? That's a complicated question. If you looked at it through his lens, maybe. Jasmine had accused, exploded, and cried on loop for weeks. Maybe he saw threats. Maybe he saw danger. Maybe he believed he was protecting Matilda from instability, not ripping her away. But here's the flip side. Matt had options. He could have gone to counseling. He could have leaned into fatherhood instead of using Jasmine's worst emotional moment as evidence of her being unfit. Claiming full custody during your partner's collapse doesn't look like care. It looks like calculation. And then came the gasoline. Because, of course, in true Matt fashion, the man wanted receipts on camera. A crew member caught him quietly telling a producer, "I want the truth out there. People need to see why I'm doing this." In that moment, Jasmine wasn't screaming over her broken heart. She was screaming over feeling used. Used for storylines. Used for control. And now used to make Matt look like the rational one in the room. It wasn't self-destruction. It was emotional combustion. Jasmine's pleadings went unanswered. She collapsed onto her side on the hotel carpet, rocking slightly, whispering to herself that she couldn't survive this. And oddly, nobody knew what to do. The crew froze. The producers whispered from the hallway. Matt stayed seated, watching her break down like he was still trying to talk himself into believing she deserved it. And then, just when you think she couldn't take another hit, Jasmine heard the worst thing she could have heard in that moment. Matt dropped the name. Gino. He told the crew, calmly, that Jasmine had never fully gotten over her ex, that she'd allegedly kept messaging Gino while with Matt, that sometimes she still compared them, still cried about him, still drifted emotionally back towards something Matt could never give her. A version of love that, while toxic, had felt more intense than his numb stability. Jasmine froze mid-sob. She turned to Matt, eyes wide, tear streaks drying on her cheeks, and shook her head like it wasn't even about defending herself. It was about staying conscious. Because one thing Jasmine had tried to kill inside herself was that connection to Gino. Did she occasionally spiral back emotionally? Maybe. Did she ever try to go back? No. At least, not publicly. But hearing Matt frame her entire breakdown as rooted in him being a second choice? That was nuclear. She choked out the words, frantic, not forceful. That's not true. You don't understand. It's not like that. Matt didn't flinch. He added one more line, with a shrug that felt heavier than a scream. I deserve someone who wants me completely. It wasn't the sentence, it was the tone. Cold. Resigned. Like the verdict had been written long before Jasmine even packed her bags and came to America. And in that moment, surrounded by people, Jasmine had never felt more alone. The room was emotionally wrecked, but Matt wasn't finished. His face stayed still, but his words cut deeper than if he'd screamed. He looked straight ahead, not at Jasmine, and said it like he'd already rehearsed it in his head 100 times. She still talks to Gino. She still cries about him. I can't compete with a ghost. That was it. That was the dagger. Not an accusation. A eulogy. For everything they had built. Now, did Jasmine actually reach out to Gino behind Matt's back? That part's murky. There's no hard proof splashed across Instagram DMs or exposed text threads, just the weight of Matt's conviction and Jasmine's silence. But what Matt was really pointing at wasn't about messages. It was about ghosts. Triggers. A woman dragging unresolved heartbreak into a relationship she thought would save her. And maybe, whether or not she ever typed his name again, she did bring Gino into the room. Every time she questioned Matt's love. Every time memories of betrayal shaped how she interpreted love now. For Matt, validation had limits. He could handle late nights and dirty diapers. But emotional flashbacks to Gino? To Jasmine's last toxic spiral? That, for him, was too much. And maybe he wasn't wrong for drawing the line. Maybe he truly couldn't carry another man's shadow for the rest of his life. Especially not while raising a child. But the kicker? Instead of saying that months ago, calmly, with clarity, he let it all rot until he exploded it. And Jasmine? Jasmine didn't collapse this time. She froze. The kind of stillness people mistake for strength, when really, it's someone trying not to implode. Her lips parted, eyes wide, face pale. She wasn't screaming anymore. She was trying to breathe through humiliation. This wasn't about Gino. It was about her deepest fear coming alive in real time. No matter how much she gives, no one ever stays. For Jasmine, love had always come with expiration dates. Her relationships, her safety, her reputation. She once told cameras she kept loving broken people because she believed fixing them meant she'd finally be worth staying for. But trying to prove you're not disposable by overcommitting to someone already halfway out the door? That's not power. That's panic with makeup on. In those final moments, Jasmine wasn't just mourning Matt. She was mourning every man before Matt who left without explanation. Every ghost that whispered, "You'll always be too much, and not enough." Matt threw the words like steel darts. "You've never really been here, Jasmine. Your body, yes. But your mind? Always elsewhere." She choked back a response that never made it out. What could she say? That she had tried her hardest? That she never intended to let her past poison this current love? She had said all of that 100 times, but the damage had calcified. Matt wasn't asking questions anymore. He was making judgments. And yet, let's not erase Jasmine's mess either. She had cracks. Big ones. She fought ugly. She second-guessed him in public. She demanded reassurance and control in a way that could feel smothering. And when conflict came, she escalated fast. She used emotional chaos like a defensive weapon. Panic first, talk later. But you can't love someone so loudly they forget your volume scares them. So yes, Jasmine gave her all. But some of what she gave was toxic. And Matt, with no emotional flashcards and a lifetime of bottling emotions, didn't know how to process that kind of heat without shutting every window and running for shelter. Still, even after everything, you'd think there would be a moment where Matt flinched, where he saw the mother of his child crumbling and reached for compassion. But there wasn't. Not for Jasmine. The only moment Matt showed emotion, real, visible emotion, was when he opened Matilda's small pink backpack and started packing her clothes. That's when his hands shook a little. That's when he blinked a few times and turned his head so the camera wouldn't catch his eyes. For Jasmine, there was no version of reality where Matt walked out with Matilda. That backpack, zipped carefully with her pacifiers and baby lotions, felt like the loudest betrayal of all. Because in Jasmine's head, she'd been battling for love. But Matt? He had already pivoted to custody. She whispered from across the room, her voice thin as thread. "You're really taking her?" Matt didn't answer. He pushed the backpack down into the suitcase and zipped it slow. Neat. Surgical. Avoidant. Not because he didn't care, but maybe because he cared once and didn't know what to do with the version of Jasmine love had turned into. That was the last moment where something human flickered behind Matt's eyes. But it wasn't for the woman on the floor. It was for the baby in the crib. The door clicked shut behind him like the final note of a song no one wanted to sing anymore. Matt walked back into the hotel room, calm like he hadn't just set fire to someone's idea of forever. Jasmine was sitting on the edge of the bed. Still. Stiff. Hands tangled in the stitching of Matilda's baby blanket. She didn't look up. She already knew. Everyone did. The breakup wasn't coming. It had already happened. And the only thing left was the body. Matt stood across the room, elbows on his knees, eyes glued to the floor. 1 beat. 2. 3. Jasmine's voice unlocked the stillness, but barely. "Just tell me. No fight. No drama. Not this time." The man she had crossed oceans for, twisted herself for, cried into her pillow for, kept his voice level like he was ordering lunch. "I can't do this anymore." And that was it. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't angry. But in a way, it was worse. Because in that instant, everything Jasmine had been afraid of, every suspicion, every unspoken night, every ignored plea for closeness, was stamped with finality. There would be no turning point, no second chance. The love story was already closed, and she wasn't even given the courtesy of the last page. She asked him, barely able to push air through her throat, "Is there someone else?" A small shake of the head. "No. It's the instability, the mistrust, the stress. I can't raise a child in this." The word child swirled around her like acid. Because for Jasmine, this wasn't about losing a boyfriend. It was about losing the family she had bet her life on. It was about watching the man she tried desperately to love walk away, not just from her, but from the dream she sold her past for. "You've been planning to replace me," she whispered, wet-eyed and trembling, unable to sit still. Your mom already picked someone else. Matt didn't deny it. He didn't confirm it, either. He gave the kind of silence that answers without mercy. I've been planning for peace, he said. That sentence broke a part of her that no apology could ever glue back together. Jasmine clutched the baby blanket like a person holding on to a prayer. Like if she let it go, she'd disappear too. Her back curled forward. Her shoulders sank. Her head bowed. Her inhale stuttered like every cell in her body was malfunctioning under the weight of being discarded. I gave up everything for you. She wasn't competing now. She wasn't accusing. She was confessing. Confessing that she had placed all her belonging, her future, her stability in Matt's lap, and he was walking away with barely a scuff on his shirt. Matt didn't reach for her. Didn't say sorry. Didn't blink. It's not always the slap that leaves a scar. Sometimes it's the way someone chooses not to turn around while you're sobbing on the floor. And Jasmine? She fell. Physically and emotionally. Her body folded to the carpet with a muted thud, her hands balled into fists against the cheap hotel rug. She shook. She screamed, not at him, but to no one. I've lost everything. Her voice cracked, over and over again. I've lost everything. Not one punch in that moment was louder than the internal collapse she felt. It wasn't dramatic. It was a woman unraveling with the cameras off. No script. No producers. Just heartbreak. And Matt? He pressed both palms into his face. Not to cry. Not to comfort. But maybe to stop himself from being the villain he was afraid to admit he'd become. Or maybe he never thought he was the villain at all. Maybe he thought this was better. And maybe that's what hurt Jasmine the most. The possibility that this man, the one she sacrificed family, culture, and pride for, thought it was rational to abandon her when she needed reassurance the most. There was no big hug, no final kiss. He didn't kneel to meet her on the floor. He just stood up, walked to the closet, and pulled out the suitcase. The same suitcase she'd unpacked after landing in America, with stars in her eyes. Slowly, methodically, he packed Matilda's things. Her tiny pink onesies, the white stuffed elephant Jasmine bought the week they found out she was pregnant. The bottle warmers. Pacifiers. Wipes. Diapers. Each item neatly folded. Each zipper carefully closed. That's when Jasmine screamed again, begging. Not for Matt, but for her daughter. You can't take her. I will die without her. I will die. You understand that? But Matt didn't change course. He delivered the same line everyone else already heard. She needs stability. To him, Jasmine's panic was proof. Proof that she wasn't fit. Proof that she was out of control. Proof that he was making the responsible choice. But behind that rationalization was a man who never once considered what would happen to someone who attached themselves so deeply just to be left like this. She tried to lunge forward, clutching at the suitcase, at his wrist, anything. But producers had to step in between them. Not because it was a fight, but because the breakdown was unbearable to watch. Jasmine dropped into the corner of the room, rocked back and forth, clutching Matilda's baby blanket, whispering to herself, I just wanted a family. I just wanted to be good enough. Matt kept packing. A few minutes later, with Jasmine still sobbing in the background, he zipped the final bag and stood at the door with a blank face. Glanced over to where Jasmine sat, but not at her, just over her. Then he left. No goodbye. No pause. The click of the lock behind him sounded more permanent than any marriage license ever could. So the question still burns. Did Matt ever love Jasmine at all? Or was she always temporary, a placeholder until someone safer, calmer, more acceptable showed up? Because the way he left, there was no heartbreak in his eyes, no hesitation in his step. Just a man who had already processed the breakup weeks ago while Jasmine was still waiting to be seen. And Jasmine? She broke. Hard. But that final crack didn't kill her. It transformed her because for the first time in what felt like months, she stopped reaching toward Matt. She blinked through her tears, pulled the baby blanket closer, and her whisper changed. I will protect you. If I have to restart from nothing, I will. That sentence wasn't for Matt. It was for Matilda. The baby now at the center of a war Jasmine never thought she'd have to fight alone. She wasn't healed. She wasn't even half okay. But she was awake. And that spark, the one she thought had died, was back, flickering. Matt might have taken the child physically, but emotionally, Jasmine wasn't about to disappear quietly. And where it gets even messier? Rumors are flying that custody isn't as final as Matt wanted the world to believe. The legal battle might have started, sure, but the court hadn't ruled anything when those bags were packed. In fact, word has it Jasmine's already taking action. So what really happened after he walked out? Where is Matilda now? And did Matt's full custody stunt backfire? That story, the reversal, the fallout, and Jasmine's unexpected comeback, that's coming next. And you're not going to want to miss how everything flipped behind closed doors.